Welcome. I'm Susan Noyes, the founder of Make It Better Media Group, which includes Marin Magazine, Better, Spaces, and the Make It Better Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us. Your time is precious. So it is very valuable, and it speaks volumes to us that you've joined us today. Your time will be well spent, though, because you are about to learn outstanding advice from expert Helen, whose personal story is inspiring too. At any time during the conversation, please send questions in the chat, and we will address them following Helen's short presentation during our Q&A. The video of this event will be sent tomorrow and included in a follow-up article in Better and Marin magazines online. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to our email newsletters, the Better Letters, and follow our social network so that you can find this too. Helen is a wealth manager in the Bay Area who has enjoyed a spectacular 30-year career advising high household income clients. She is a charter member of not one, but 2 Rotary clubs, has served as assistant governor to 3 district governors, and has volunteered for hospice, the Humane Society, and with her reading dog in children's classrooms. As her success grew, so did her community service. But it is her service empowering women financially, which brings us together today. Helen teaches Wise Up, the financial education for women at the Marin Community College. Her best advice for her students will help each of you too. More importantly, her values, compelling statistics, and passion for the topic should inspire you to become more financially empowered too. Welcome, Helen. I am so excited, and the rest of the audience is too, to hear from you.
Hi, Susan. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here today. Yes, so I teach the Wise Up class, and I teach the class to honor my mother. See, she died from cancer when I was only in my 20s. So just a little background, both my parents were immigrants, and there were very few jobs available to them. My mother worked as a seamstress in a sweatshop in Chinatown, and my father worked in a Chinese grocery store. So there was a lot that we actually did without when we were growing up. An example is there were no vacations, but luckily there were parks and playgrounds close by. We didn't buy any toys, but we had pots and pans. And if we had to go somewhere, because we didn't have a car, we either walked or we took the bus. So I remember my first vacation when I was 16, and it happened only because a classmate invited me to their family annual vacation to Disneyland. And my first Barbie doll was when I was actually 50. I bought some vintage Barbie dolls that I found for sale at a thrift store. But, you know, we always have food to eat. And because my mom was a seamstress, we always had new clothes for school. But my upbringing actually taught me some very valuable lessons. And Susan, that's what I want to share today. So my mother taught me that it's not how much you earn, but how much you save that really matters. I'm going to say that again. It's not how much you earn, but how much you save that really matters. And I didn't realize that that is the crux of everything that I've been doing and teaching. So I want to share this important point because so many people suffer and so many people feel that they can't get ahead because they don't earn enough money. You see, my mother taught us that if we have a dream, that we can make our dreams come true. We are in control. It wasn't up to someone else. That was so powerful to learn as a young person. So I think that's why I have to teach to honor her. So I want to share something about my mother. So my mother was frugal. She lived within her means. And it wasn't easy because she had 5 children. But she managed to save her pennies for a down payment to buy her first home. And some of my students have heard me talk about her saving her pennies. So what this is about is, you know, when you're a seamstress back then, you were just paid pennies for each piece of fabric that you sewed together to produce a garment. It was John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard Mutual Funds, that said, the secret to building wealth is, here's the good news, there's no secret. The secret to building wealth is there's no secret. So that's fabulous, right? He says there's two things you have to do. Number one, spend less than what you earn. Number two, invest your savings. So you can imagine when I read that, it made me smile because I said, that's exactly what my mother did. And she did this before John Bogle said it. So to spend less than what you earn means that you need to be frugal. Frugal means to live life in simple terms, to not live in excess, to not be wasteful. So as you can see, I'm describing my mother. So I want to share an example. With my first paycheck, I bought a nice leather handbag for my mother for Mother's Day. Well, she refused my gift, made me return it because it was expensive, and she felt it was in excess to spend money like that on a purse. And she didn't need another purse. She already had one. See, that's an example of being frugal. So Susan, when I teach my class, what I've learned over the years is the students come with a lot of anxiety and with a lot of emotion. So money can be very emotional for people. There's an exercise that I do. I have my students think about their earliest memory about money. I ask them to think about the family members that influenced them. Was it their father, their mother, and many times grandparents? And then when they think about this, does it make them feel happy? Does it make them feel sad? Or do they just want to avoid it altogether? And that's sometimes where some people go. So Susan, I think this might be a great time to ask our audience.
I completely agree. First of all, thank you for doing this in honor of your mother. We all have mothers or we are mothers and we can relate. And with respect to who my earliest influence was around money, it is my mom. And she did the same thing. She was a seamstress too. But it was my father's voice that actually was the one that empowered me, saying, you can do or be anything you want in the world. And I started earning, my first job was being a newspaper carrier boy. They called them the newsboy when I was 12 years old. So this is a time when I would like everybody to think about your earliest influences and thoughts and understandings around money. And if you're comfortable doing so, please share that in the comments. And as I said before, the rest of the presentation stimulates any questions you have for Helen, please send them. Helen, before we jump into the class though, would you please tell me about a reading dog?
Oh, okay. I told Susan that I actually have my baby, and she's a toy poodle, and she's actually a certified reading dog. So we volunteered together going into third grade classrooms as a reading dog. And the purpose of the reading dog is children are many times judged by adults when they can't pronounce a word or they mess up when they're reading. And that's very intimidating for children and makes them not want to read anymore. But dogs never judge. And so this reading dog program came about, started in the East Coast actually. And we use it out west now, of course. And so the reading dog is the one that comes in, the children are happy and they're never judged by the dog. The dog just sits there and, just appreciates that they're reading. But I took my little dog a step further and taught her actually how to read so she can read words on a cue card. So after the child finishes reading, then I have my dog read back to the kids and the kids just love it. So it's very encouraging for them and it's very fun for them. And it does help them improve their reading skills.
Thank you. And I want to, that gave a couple of audience members an opportunity to send their first memories, and I'd like to share those before we go on with the additional questions. So thank you, Sally Hazelgrove, for saying that you remember feeling guilt and anxiety. A lot of women do. And I think that Helen is very much about, we've got to move past that. Jill A. said that her father instructed all 4 of his daughters that they should prepare to manage their own lives and not rely on men for their livelihood. And this was in the 60s. He was very forward looking. I feel like he was sort of a little bit like my dad, who was very empowering. And Lizette said, the link went out via calendar invite that does not bring you here. There may be a lot of people in the other room. So, but we have someone working backstage. I hope that that is being worked on. Helen, can you tell us more about who comes to take that class and has responded to that good first start?
Yeah, when I first taught the class, I asked that same question. I said, who's going to show up? But actually, people and women in their 20s and women all the way up to their 80s. And I love that 3 80-year-old widows actually enrolled in my class. They met in grief counseling after their husbands passed away. And they told me that they were in class because their husbands had made mistakes and they wanted to be educated. In their 80s, they wanted to be educated so that they would avoid the same mistakes. So that's probably one of my favorite stories. Today, Susan, as you know, women are choosing to be single and remain single. Women, end up divorced unexpectedly, and many become widows. So the American College showed that 80% of women who took a financial literacy test failed. So I teach basic financial literacy.
80%?
80%
10?
women. Yes. And I hate to add this, but that's twice as many as the men who took the same test. Yeah. So I teach basic financial literacy from money management to having financial security. But here's the secret. What I really teach is that every woman can take charge of their finances, that every single woman can be financially literate. In essence, I teach confidence in this area, and I feel like I teach empowerment.
So can you talk about how the class was developed and the curriculum that you use, please, and where people can learn more?
Yeah, so in the very beginning, I used to create my own classes, and it was always very laborious to update things and to make sure I got it right. And so it was a full-time job that I didn't have time for. Then one day I discovered this particular curriculum at it was the Women's Economic Forum in Marin County, where I was a guest speaker. So I stumbled across it, and it's actually a program that's developed by the Women's Bureau, which is an agency of the Department of Labor. I didn't even know we had a Women's Bureau, but we do. And it was in 2003, they conducted a focus group of Generation X women across the US. They worked with Texas A&M University to come up with the curriculum and to write the financial handbook. And that's the handbook that I use today. And there are many, many things that they learned from these women. So it was really great. The top 4 things that I want to share today about what they learned were these, because I'm sure most people can relate to these. The top 4 are: number 1, women know that they have to save for retirement. Number 2, women knew that their financial future was too important to leave up to someone else. Number 3, women struggled with not having enough money to pay their bills each month. Number 4, having credit card debt and making only the minimum monthly payments was a huge problem because the debt just kept growing. And there's many more, but I'm going to stop at these 4. So, what's interesting, Susan, is today, women are still faced with these same issues and same challenges.
But women are also rising. At every level, the stats show that women are outpacing men in college admissions, graduate school degrees, and we have more women in the C-suite than ever. We have more women in Congress than ever. So can you talk about the dynamics around that, please?
Yes, you are absolutely correct. Women have made great strides in both education and in the workplace. Women are in places of power today. But, despite all this progress, women continue to be at risk of not having a secure retirement. And unfortunately, I do see it on a regular basis through my own work with working with investors. So there are so many obstacles that face women today, and I want to share a few. This is from the American College of Financial Services that backs this up. Number one, women live 5 to 7 years longer than their male counterparts. So that could be good news in that they inherit the money, but the not so good news is it means that they actually need more money to live on. Number two, women earn lower wages. And many of you have heard this. Women still earn 20% less than their male counterparts for the same job. 79 cents for every dollar. I feel like we've been talking about this for, I don't know, forever. Number three, women take time off for childbirth, to raise the children, to take care of aging parents. And they're the ones that end up working part-time because of all these responsibilities. So this definitely reduces their ability to save enough for their own retirement. And I want to share some data about divorce because I think this is a good time to talk about this. The American College says there are 4 things that women have to know when it comes to divorce. Number one, 50% of all marriages end up in divorce, taking years to recover financially. 50%. Number two, 20% of all women fall into poverty after divorce. Number three, this is a big one, 75% of women do not receive their full child support payments. And number four, 30% of women who own their own homes, they will lose their homes after divorce.
So now that you have kind of broken our hearts with those difficult stats, let's jump to what's your best advice for women to build their confidence, to know that they like to do whatever the hard work is that they need to do to become confident of themselves as in their financial lives?
Okay, that's a great question. To help women develop their confidence. So this is what I've learned from working with women and observing my students. Whatever is holding you back is usually a story that you are telling yourself. Right? Whatever is holding you back is a story that you're telling yourself.
Can you give an example? Can you give an example of that?
Well, it's connected to what your first impression of money is. If you were told that you can never earn enough money, that's the story you're going to tell yourself. If you were told that you'll never rise to the top because you're a female, that's the story you're going to tell yourself. If you tell yourself that you have too much debt and that's what you're focused on, you're going to have more debt. Those are the stories that many times people tell themselves. But here's the good news, because there's always good news. You can change your story. I give you permission today to change the story. After completing my class, many of the women will have a paradigm shift about their stories about money and finances. They will have a new story and they'll start telling themselves the new story. And these new stories are positive and will serve them in a good way. So I would say that's what I can say about helping women develop their confidence. And I do want to share a couple of success stories from my students. So I'm always pleased when they share back with me how well they're doing. And it's very satisfying, of course, to hear that I played a small part in this. So many of them are reporting back to me that they are now debt-free when they thought they could never be. Some have paid off all of their credit card debt. Some are able to save for a home. Some are actually homeowners now. And mostly all of them are wiser.
Can you also just give us, your top 10 or your top 8, whatever it is, points, your best advice?
Okay, so if I had to narrow it down, I think it's really important because I'm finding that when women are faced with divorce or death of a spouse, this is like when life throws you a curveball. And I have found that most women are not prepared to handle any of this. So I think my top advice would be you need to know what your monthly income and expenses are. For yourself, or if you're in a household, you need to know what his monthly income and expenses are, for yourself and your entire household. And many times people don't know what this is. You need to have some financial goals written down. You need to save for emergencies. It's the emergencies that really throw havoc. And of course, with COVID recently, people have found themselves in emergency situations, not going to work, not getting paid as much. If they had a business, they had to shut down. So really saving money for emergencies. And Susan, you may not know this, but I actually traveled to Uganda recently for a humanitarian project. And I met a Ugandan restaurant owner, and I asked him, I said, how was COVID for you owning a restaurant? I said, it must have been terrible. And this gentleman from Uganda, which is a very, very, very poor place, he said, my family and I were lucky. We did okay because we had savings. We had saved up just in case there was an emergency. I was so flabbergasted with this. I had to travel all the way to Uganda to know that, hey, people get this, So saving for emergencies, I think, is really critical. There's something called the 50-30-20 rule. So what this means is it's a way to help you to budget, because many times people are asking, well, how do I do this? How much do I save? How much, I only have so much money to go around. So the 50-30-20 rule goes like this. So to help you budget, you take your net paycheck. This is after taxes. You save 50% for everything that you absolutely need. I call it the must-haves. Then you save 30% for things that you want. And you save 20% for your savings. And what I teach in my class is the difference between must-haves and wants. So what you need and what you want are two different things. And it's always really fun to watch my students, sort of a light bulb goes off like, oh, those two things are different, but I want everything, right? No, they can want things, but there are things they have to have. So that's always kind of a fun thing to teach my students.
So can we stay with that? If you start with your monthly income and expenses, I'm just throwing numbers out there. If you have a $10,000 monthly income, net expenses, this is after they've taken out taxes and whatever else, healthcare, then half of that, $5,000, is what you should be spending to get by. Your rent, your food, your necessaries.
Yeah, that's what you have. That's what you have to spend for your mortgage or your rent, your utilities, the food, the things that you actually need. But if you've got your Netflix on there and you've got Hulu as well, and you've got 3 gym memberships, which sometimes people discover that they do and they forgot, those are not things that you need, but those are things that you want. So the 30% goes for those things.
In COVID times, people probably feel like they really do need those streaming services. But I understand the 30% is it's not what you need to literally live and get by and be housed.
Yeah, so I call them the needs versus the wants. Right? We have to take care of the needs first, and then the wants is next. And of course, saving.
And you wanted to give your mom a lovely present for her birthday. That's those presents fit in the wants, right? And then the 20%, when you say save, what goes in the save bucket?
Yeah, so the savings bucket is a little bit more complex in that if you've got debt to pay off, then 20% should be going towards paying off the debt. And sometimes it's hard to save money and pay debt off, but if you can get creative and do both. So I kind of think of it like if there were cookie jars, you want to put cookies into both of them. Put some cookies into the savings jar, put some cookies into the debt jar. But ideally pay off your debt and be debt-free.
Do you have advice for people around how long it should take them to pay off their debt?
My quick answer is as quickly as possible. And of course, that sounds daunting to people. So you have to do your best. You have to pay attention. You have to put focus in this area. So if you apply the 50, 30, 20 rule, it helps you to get there quicker, because all of a sudden you realize, I don't need that. I don't need that. I want it, but I don't need it. And you start to shift. This is the paradigm shift that I was talking about earlier.
And what about women who want to start businesses? Because in terms of women rising, there are more women. Women are starting far more businesses now than men.
Yes. Yes. In fact, in the last 15 years, Susan, women-owned businesses have grown faster, 5 times faster than the national average. That's huge.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So women are very, very interested in finance, in financial matters and in finance for their business.
So for start, how do finances work when you are starting a business?
Actually, believe it or not, the same rules apply. People tend to think it could be different. You need to get your personal financial house in order, right? You need to make certain that you are covering your immediate needs. You need to make certain that the what now probably becomes your business. You want your business to succeed. So the things that you were spending money on before might start to shift, might start to go towards the business. And of course, savings is even more important, because when you become self-employed, the risk is there's no paycheck unless you are there working and making the paycheck.
So here's a question that popped up. Pay debt first before putting money in savings, if it has to be one or the other?
Yeah, if it has to be one or the other, definitely pay off debt, because debt carries a high interest rate. And usually the debt that people have, if it's a credit card debt, is the most expensive and outrageous interest rate, double digits, usually over 10%. Some are still as high as 18%. That is just throwing money out the door. In fact, there's a number. If you don't add to your credit card and you carry credit card debt and you make the minimum payment each month, it will take you more than 12 years to pay off that credit card. So in essence, you've spent maybe 2 or 3 times more for that particular item.
So everyone's hearing that the interest rates are low. So if you go to the bank to borrow money for yourself, as opposed to using a credit card, aren't you quite likely to be able to borrow money from a bank for less interest rate in order to pay off the 18% interest rate right away?
That's going to vary from bank to bank, but generally speaking, Susan, that's true. The credit card interest rate, the finance charge on credit cards is usually the highest.
Yeah. So get out from under those credit cards as fast as you can.
Yeah, credit cards are not your friend. Credit cards are there to benefit the banks.
Exactly. So here's another question. For savings, do you consider the 20% to include your 401k? I love that question. And also, do savings, when you say anything else, save for retirement, what do you put in that bucket?
Yeah. So yes, it does. I'm going to answer that question directly. The answer is yes. But the other things you want to be saving for is an emergency fund. An emergency fund should consist of 3 to 6 months worth of your monthly expenses. So again, going back to Susan's example earlier, if $5,000 is your monthly expense, the things that you need, times 3 will be $15,000. So you want to save towards emergency funds, save for your retirement account, which is 401k, 403b, SEP IRA. Those are all various different types of retirement accounts. And you could just have general savings, like my mother did, to eventually invest your money, whether it be real estate, buying your home, starting a business, or just general investing.
And in general, is it more effective to invest through something besides a savings account at a bank? Meaning invest in real estate, invest in the stock market, invest in growing your own business. Where should women
Yeah, so I
invest?
think you're asking,
To have the most bang for their investment.
how to get the most bang for your money. So I think that really depends. And I know sometimes that's not a good answer, but I'll tell you what it depends. Depends on your family situation. Is there someone else in your family that's earning income? Is there discretionary income? Or are you supporting yourself? That's number one. Number two, it depends on your level of risk. You know, many people would love to leave their jobs and start their own companies. And I think that's fabulous. That's fantastic. That's how you can get ahead. But there's also huge risk there. And, you know, unfortunately, COVID showed us a lot of the risk. I mean, who would have thought that an entire economy could shut down where no one could leave their house? I mean, if you had told me that that could be a risk, I would have laughed and said, no, that would never happen, but it happened. So know that risk is a really important factor to consider in terms of how you allocate your resources. But I'll tell you what will help you manage risk is by having savings. Like the gentleman in Uganda who had savings, having savings is the one thing that can help you go to sleep at night. It can allow you actually to take more risk, because in taking risk, there's always a chance of loss. So if there's a chance of loss, if you have savings, you can still pay your bills. This
So
is how you avoid being homeless.
are you advocating that the savings be in cash or cash equivalents as opposed to in the stock market or some other instrument?
Okay, great question. So your emergency savings, as much as people want to invest that money because of low interest rates, it should be kept in cash or cash equivalents. Because after all, an emergency says that you don't know when you're going to need it. And the minute that you need it, you don't want it to be down 5%, 10%, 30%. You want it to be exactly what you're expecting.
All right. Now, there's another great question that came in with its own conclusion. And I would love for you to think about this, because Helen was saying, if this goes well, I might want to do this again. And the question is, how about a $35,000 a year salary for jobs for women endorsed by county agencies against a $2,000 a month just for rent before utilities? Like, how does a woman survive in that scenario? And then the in parentheses, maybe a topic for another presentation. But I would love for you to jump on, like, how they're spending more than half on rent, and that's before everything else. How do you ever get ahead?
That's a great question. I get that all the time. And I think that's why I started today with my mother as an example. I don't have her paychecks. I don't think she even received paychecks, but she was paid the lowest income of any job. And she was able to save her pennies, and she was able to live frugally. So sometimes people don't like to hear this, but sometimes you have to reduce your rent. You have to live more frugal. And I know that people have a hard time with this because I hear this all the time. I'm frugal. I don't spend money on this and I don't spend money on that. So another exercise that I have my students do is I have them track 3 months worth of their previous spending. It's called a spending notebook. So you have a notebook and you actually track your 3 months or 6 months of spending. And I can almost guarantee, and there's not many things I can guarantee, but I can almost guarantee when someone does this, they're going to what I call find money. So let's go look for money, right? It's actually there. So if you go and track everything that you're spending money on, then you're going to get a sense of how you're spending every single penny. And when you do this tracking, you want to track it according to categories. So if rent is the one is sort of out of whack and it's way too high in comparison to your salary, that means that you're paying too much for rent. It's a harsh reality, and I know that's a problem, but it may mean that you need to get roommates. You may need to look for, more inexpensive housing. Or the flip side of it, and I know people don't like to hear this, is you need to earn more money. So I didn't talk about this part, Susan, but there was a time when I had 3 jobs. I had a job working 8 to 5 in a bank. I had a job teaching. So I've been a teacher for a long, long time. And I also had a job working in hospitality, all at the same time. And I was able to juggle 3 jobs. Of course, I didn't have a life, but that was what I had to do because of I think, to answer this question. Sometimes we have to sacrifice, and sometimes we have to really look at how to be frugal.
So you actually remind me of Warren Buffett with that story. He early days, as he's learning about money, he loved teaching most of all. So, and look where you are now.
And actually, today I still have more than one job, if you think about it.
That's,
one thing that I teach my students is when they invest their money, it's like their money going out and getting a job for them. Because again, to the earlier question person, how do I get ahead? You need to save your money and you need to invest it, because those investments eventually grow for you over time. And that's like your money going out and getting a job for you.
There's a term for that. It's the appreciated rate of growth. When you look at it 20 years,
compounding of money over time.
Yeah, it's stunning how much your money can grow.
Yeah, the compounding effect of money over time.
So talk a little bit about that, please.
Well, so every dollar that you invest, as it grows, so if your dollar earns 50 cents or 10 cents or $1, I'm using a very simple example, then you add those two together, now you have a larger amount, and then that starts to grow. So that's the compounding effect. Simple interest, or when it doesn't compound, means that the principal amount grows and the additional interest earned or the additional growth doesn't grow. So compounding effect of money is powerful, and that's what helps investments to grow over time.
So I'd like to do a shout out to my mom, who ended up developing a career as a financial advisor late in life, because all of a sudden she realized that the future that she had planned with my father was not going well. The business that they had built together was going in the wrong direction. And she talked to me about, I was in my 20s when she started that. She said, Susan, I was working for, I was making a lot of money for someone in their 20s with a law firm. I was an associate in a big name law firm. And she said, take $10,000 a year and put that in an annuity. And you're going to be amazed by the time you're 60 that you have well over $1 million. And I do. It's like, I look at that, I open that statement, I look at that annuity, and really it's way over $1 million, and it didn't feel like anything. So that's compounding value. I want to give you another question from Jill Lay. She is a newly retired and needs to understand how to make her retirement funds last. And she has no idea what options exist. So could you give Jill some advice about that?
I can't see the question. Can you repeat that one more time, Susan?
For someone who is newly retired, she's retired with that bucket of money, and now she wants to understand how to make that last. What are the options for doing so?
She sounds like a perfect candidate for my class. It boils down to, again, the points that you were asking me to make. You really need to know what it is that you need for covering all your expenses every single month, right? Expenses when you were working are different from expenses when you're in retirement. And then your expenses will change in the future. We haven't talked about this, but women are living longer. And because of that, healthcare expenses, which are rising faster than anything else, healthcare expenses are going to be part of the equation when you were younger and when you were working, it wasn't. So putting a financial plan together, addressing what your financial goals are, how much money you need today, and then projecting out into the future how much this money might need to grow because of inflation, right? And then therefore finding, looking to see if there's a gap between your money growing or not and your expenses growing. That tends to be the biggest challenge for people in retirement. In fact, the number one concern for people in retirement is outliving the resources. And I think that's where this question stems from. People are very worried that their money will not last long enough, but yet they're living a long, healthy life.
And do you have advice around percentages in cash equivalent and percentages in stocks or other investment tools? Because right now, someone who's had their money in stocks has probably appreciated substantially more than if they've been keeping it in just cash, growing at a very low rate of interest.
Yeah, so there's been a big challenge here, especially for women, because women that are good savers have been keeping their money in cash in the bank. And with zero interest rate, they really have been shortchanged. And if women are not investing their money, then they're missing out on the potential growth of their money. And I know that investing is taking risk, but not investing your money is also taking risk, because every day that you don't invest your money, you're losing out because of losing purchasing power, right? You're not able to keep up with inflation, and that small little amount of money that you're paid in interest rate in the bank, 0.001%, you're still getting a 1099 paying taxes on it. So always remind people that even if you're not investing your money, you're losing money by keeping it in cash. So yes, one needs to really take a look at having the right allocation to cash, not keeping too much there, but having enough so that there's enough for emergencies, and having enough in equities or the stock market so that it can grow to keep up with inflation and to meet your growing needs.
So we only have about 4 more minutes. The one thing we haven't touched on is philanthropy. Do you have advice around what to do with philanthropy with your money?
I love that question. And, I used to think about that a lot. And I know that when you're just trying to make ends meet, it's really hard to think about how can I think about philanthropy or how can I give money away. But I have a philosophical, spiritual answer to that. And my answer is the more that you can give away, the more that you will get back in return. That's just kind of a simple answer, but I think everyone should think about philanthropy, because after all, for the fact that we're all on this call right now, we're all very fortunate.
That's right.
We're all very fortunate, right? There's a reason that we're on this call. We're able to do this. We have, so much going for us, actually, that we have to think about helping others and giving some away. So definitely growing your money so that you can have extra to give away is, I think, one of the biggest joys of life.
And karma is real. Living intentionally and mindfully is real. And so the more you help others, the more blessings rain down. That's actually my experience. And that dad who empowered me financially had a money clip that said 10% is the Lord's. And it was like, he really meant that. It's like, oh, I've been fortunate to grow a business and have this family. I'm always going to donate that much back. Sadly, he was in a business that, the world changed. He had grocery stores and the big box stores came along. So that's why it was a tough time for my mom. I didn't mean to make this about her, but I really do like that 10% is the Lord. I think then when blessings rain down, we pay it forward. Okay, so is there anything else that you would like to tell everyone, Helen?
Yeah, I want to share this. I think everyone needs to think about this. Dream big, believe in yourself. You can create the life that you want. My mother did.
Amen. Thank you so
I do
much.
have a thought for the day. Can I end with a thought for the day?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is my favorite thought for the day. Some of you have heard this. You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. That's from C.S. Lewis. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please watch for the follow-up content, subscribe to our Better Letters, follow us online, and send any more questions you have for Helen. We'll get some answers back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.